we have done Surah Al-Fatiha and the first 7 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah in the last 2 sessions. Now I am going to begin with verse 8 onwards. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين. And among these people, there are those hypocrites who claim that we believe in Allah and the last day, even though they don't believe. So, Surah Al-Baqarah, which is divided into 2 broad groups, segments. The first one is addressing the children of Israel directly, and the second one is addressing Muslims directly. But before the beginning of these 2 bigger segments of the surah, we have call them introductory verses, the prelude. And in this introductory description, Surah Al-Baqarah is talking about, to begin with, the different religious groups that were there in Medina Yasrib. So the first description was of the people who were God conscious, Hudal lil Muttaqin. The second description was of the people who were Allazina Kafaru, who were disbelievers and had rejected belief completely. Now comes the third group, which is that of hypocrites and people who were weak in their faith and so weak that they were bordering on hypocrisy. This group has gotten a lengthier description than the others, because this is a very problematic group. They say they believe, but they don't believe. So, it's something which deserves greater, deeper attention, also because of the fact that the Quran obviously is to be read by Muslims. And hypocrites are amongst Muslims. A hypocrite has to be a Muslim because he recites the kalama, he introduces himself as a Muslim. So, this is the third group now. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and amongst these people, that people of Yasrib, Medina, there are those who claim that we believe in Allah and the last day, even though they don't believe. The Quran is very clear in its statements that belief in Allah and belief in the last day is not something that is going to be acceptable in the eyes of Allah by simply making a statement. God doesn't want lip service from us. He wants good, proper conduct, behavior, which is in line with beliefs. So these people were making this claim, and the Almighty says that their claim is wrong. It's not acceptable. They don't believe. Their attitude and behavior is not in line with the expectations of belief in Allah and the next life. يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. They want to deceive Allah and the believers, even though the fact is that they are deceiving only themselves, but they don't realize. So they were introducing themselves as Muslims, as believers, but they were also having good relations with the enemies of the message, and therefore they were deceiving. And they were deceiving believers, and they were deceiving God. Because, if somebody who tells lies, and we'll see that hypocrites, they tell lies, somehow tries to convince himself that God doesn't know. If you believe and you know that God knows what you're doing, you can still do things wrong, but you can't stick to them. You can't persistently do things wrong, realizing that God knows it. So they have to fool themselves. So that's what they were doing. وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ. And the fact of the matter is that they are deceiving only themselves. وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. But they don't realize. Now, this statement, they don't realize, might prompt you to ask, then what is their fault if they don't realize? I mean, if you don't even realize, then why are you wrong? I mean, you're not at fault. Uh, that's a good question. I think the answer is that this lack of realization is the one that was their own fault. It was because they had deceived themselves so much that the realization which a good person has was lost. We all have a conscience. It pricks, but only to a certain extent. If you continue to go against the voice of your conscience, then there comes a time when it ceases to correct you and you don't even realize. That's a huge loss. And that's what these people were, that's the kind of stage that they had gone into. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا. There was a disease in their hearts. فزادهم الله مرضا. And Allah increased their disease. Well, there are two questions at least. One question is, what was that disease? It was a disease of jealousy. The Jews were jealous of the fact that they were expecting a prophet indeed. They knew it. They still know it. But they were not expecting him to be from the children of Ismail. Because they didn't hate them. They just felt that they were lesser. They looked down upon them. They were arrogant. So, and they used to make fun of them. That is why it is said that, quite apart from many other reasons, it's one reason why you should never, ever make fun of anyone, considering others to be lesser than you. Because you know what? It may happen that those you are making fun of may turn out to be superior than you, even in worldly status, and then you will be left with no choice but to just be jealous of them. So this false sense of superiority, arrogance, was so strongly entrenched in their minds and hearts that this was an ailment. And by the way, I keep saying it to myself and to others that it is natural to be jealous. I mean, I will not be impressed by a person who says, I've never been jealous. I think jealousy is one of those things that you have and then you control it. You tell yourself that, come on, man, behave. I mean, if he has performed better than you, probably he deserved it. God chose him for it. So, you have to talk to yourself about it. So there was this ailment, this disease in them. They would have controlled it. They would have gone for some good medicine for it. But they didn't. And what happened was, فَزَادَهُمُ marada, and Allah increased their disease. Why did Allah do it? Why did he do it? Not long ago, I made a statement in a khutbah in America. And I mentioned an oft-repeated statement that مَنْ يَهْدِهِ اللَّهُ فَلَا مُضِلَّ لَهُ وَمَنْ يُضْلِلْهُ فَلَا هَادِيَ لَهُ. The one whom God misguides, there is nobody who can guide him. And there came a gentleman later telling me, brother, don't say that. God misguides. No, God doesn't misguide. I said, this is the translation. I said, no, do some other translation. But this is not acceptable. I mean, come on, man, just understand. This is one of the problems in understanding the Quran, that you want the Quran to say what pleases you. Let the Quran say what the Quran is saying. And if you have a problem, sort it out. I mean, solve your own problem and don't change the Quran because it's not going according to your imagination expectations. The answer to this question is, in my opinion, that God has a law. He has a policy, which he described. Not one, he has got many policies, but I'm talking about a particular policy. The Quran calls God's policies Sunnatullah. These are his ways, his principles. One important Sunnah of the Almighty is the Sunnah regarding guidance and misguidance. Hidayat. He has decided that if you are going to seek guidance, he will definitely guide you. But if you are not going to be interested in guidance and you will adopt ways which are completely against the expectations of a guided person, you will not behave properly. You will not be guided. You will be misguided. So God misguides on merit because some people deserve it. They behave in a way that they don't deserve guidance and therefore they get misguided. And God does it because it's God's law. It's his policy. So why would he not do it? He has given freedom, free will to everybody. He has given enough reasons for people to follow the right path. And yet, if they choose to follow the wrong path, then they are misguided. And God misguides. So the Quran says, Fi qulubihim maradun, in their hearts there was a disease. Fazadahumullahu marada. So God increased their disease. Walahum azabun alim. And for them is going to be a grievous penalty, punishment, bima kanu yakzibun, because of the way they used to lie. Grievous penalty because they did it on their own. They knowingly, deliberately did it. And this point obviously is important to be taken note of. They used to lie. Oh my goodness. If you lie, you will not get guided. If you lie, you're a hypocrite. As simple as that. A believer cannot lie. I mean, it's so strange that Muslims lie. How can they? And it is so strange that Muslims love some people who lie. They know that they lie, but they're fond of them. I don't know. I mean, what's going on? That is why I keep saying the same thing over and over again. It's all happening because we don't read the Quran. We don't read the Quran the way the Quran deserves to be read. The Quran is a brilliant book for us. We love it. We kiss it. We read it for rewards, not for guidance. Because had Muslims read the Quran for guidance, they would not have been liars. So, I mean, the Quran is absolutely clear and mentions right at the beginning that, these hypocrites are going to get grievous punishment because they lied. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And when it is said to them that don't create mischief on earth, قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْلِمُونَ. They respond and say, we are only striving for Islah, reconciliation. We are seeking peace. Now, what is this? For this, I'll have to mention something that needs to be understood if you want to understand the Quran properly. I'll mention it probably the next time when I talk about the prerequisites of understanding the Quran, that the Quran from A to Z is the description of the saga of the prophetic mission. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a messenger of God. And it is God's policy rule that whenever his messenger will come in this world addressing his nation, and the nation would reject it, his message, despite the fact that it would become absolutely clear. If they will reject it and continue to reject it and oppose it, then beyond a certain deadline, that nation, group of people are going to be punished by God in this very life. We read these stories so many times in the Quran. Nuh alayhi salam, Hud alayhi salam, Salih alayhi salam, Shuaib alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam. Why have these stories been mentioned over and over again? It's because the people who were facing the Quran, the Prophet of Quran, Prophet of Islam, they were also going to receive the same punishment if they would have rejected the message. So, God's punishment has to visit the land where people are rejecting a messenger of Allah. And when that punishment would visit that place, that land, it's going to be mischief. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be destruction. And these people, these hypocrites, they were friendly with those who were rejecting the messenger. They were siding with them. And therefore, they were causing mischief on earth. Because what they were doing would have invited punishment sooner or later. That would have destroyed people. Flood, earthquakes, storms, etc. When they come and they completely annihilate a certain locality and nation, it really is destructive. And these people were paving the way for that destruction. The only way you can avert that punishment is by believing in the messenger. This one point, I'll keep emphasizing it because it's a very important point to understand. Because Muslims have not been able to understand it properly. You find that there are many people now popularly known as jihadis who are apparently doing jihad and mentioning all those verses of the Quran which were actually meant for the kuffar who had rejected the messenger of God, despite the fact that they had received the message convincingly. So now the Quran is talking about these people, these hypocrites, that the Quran is telling them, when it was said to them, don't create mischief on earth. In other words, believe properly. Because if you're not going to believe properly, then it's going to cause you to be punished, and the punishment is not going to come in a simple way. It's going to destroy, and it's going to be, because of you. So you are causing mischief on earth. Their response was, what? Innama nahnu muslihun. We are striving for reconciliation. I mean, we are living in Medina. It's a city, Muslims, Jews, other people. We are bringing them together. We are friendly with Muslims and we are friendly with Jews. What is the problem? Now, this is a very difficult subject that I'm talking right now. This attitude is good, desirable. If you are living in a society where there is no messenger, like this society, reconciliation, bringing different religious groups together is a good idea. Why? Because the truth is not absolutely clear. Our effort should be to bring people together so that we can talk to them about God's message. When a messenger comes, he is al-bayyina, absolutely clear. The light is so dazzling, nobody can deny it. And therefore, to take a stance that, we have a different point of view is not possible. It's denying and rejecting. Beyond a certain deadline, such people were to be destroyed. So these so-called Muslims, they said, look here, why are you blaming us? What we are doing is something desirable. We are friendly with you and we are friendly with them. So they said, we are doing it for a good cause. Allah, beware. Innahum humul mufsidun. They are indeed mischief mongers. Walakillah yashurun, but they're not realizing it. Again, the same realizing, They did not bother to understand the message of the Almighty properly. They wanted to ignore it deep inside, and they were being friendly with them as well as them. They knew that, the Quran was absolutely clear that if they are not going to accept these people, then there's going to be punishment of the Almighty that will come sooner or later. The Quran has left no doubt in that understanding. I'm sure you all read the Quran, you know that these punishments have been mentioned so many times. So somebody who was reading the Quran and listening to it over and over again, saying that, let's have a midway path. Be good to them as well as them. It's fine. Ordinarily, there is no problem in it, except when the messenger is there. I said it's difficult because it is difficult to help some people understand it. You know why? Because people have a certain principle that they describe, that the Quran is a source of guidance for all Muslims for all times to come. So they will say to me, are you trying to tell us that this guidance is not for our times? In other words, if a person is good with Jews and Christians and Muslims, is he not a mischief monger? Is he not trying to create mischief on earth? Is it not a problem? It's a difficult thing to explain to people unless they are prepared to do tadabbur, unless they seriously understand the Quran with deep reflection. Otherwise, if you read the Quran, with a cursory look, not you don't bother to read it carefully, then this understanding that I'm giving you would seem problematic to people. But you can't explain these verses except the way that I've mentioned. That they were trying to have reconciliation. And the Quran said this is actually tantamounts to creating mischief on earth. So, Allah innahum humul mufsidun. Beware, these are the people who are creating mischief. Walakillah yashurun, but they're not realizing it. They're not realizing it because the sense of realization that God gave them has been lost. Right? وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسِ. And when it is said to them that believe truly the way these people have believed, that is, these companions of the Prophet ﷺ, these people have believe like them. قَالُوا, they say, أَنُؤْمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ. They respond, should we believe the way these idiots have believed? Obviously, this statement they did not make in public. They would say it in their hearts. This is another aspect of Quranic understanding. You have to imagine by reading the text and its context that certain things are mentioned as if they have been spoken. And in Arabic, there's a possibility of explaining these words to mean that they said it in their own hearts or to each other secretly. Didn't say it to the Muslims. Should we believe the way these idiots have believed? Allah, innahum humus sufahau. Beware, they in fact are idiots. Walakillah ya'lamun. But they don't know. They do not have the kind of understanding that would make them aware that what they are doing is simple foolishness. I mean, it's downright foolishness for somebody to not accept the message of the Quran the way it is, knowing that it's from God, and doing it simply because of your desires, your ego, your vested interests. I mean, nothing can be more foolish than that. And the Quran actually uses this expression that people who are doing things wrong knowingly, they are zalamu anfusahum. They are being unfair to themselves. They're causing harm to themselves. So that's what the Quran is saying here, much in other words. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا. And when they meet believers, they say, we too believe. وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ. But when they meet their Satans, their leaders, قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ. They say to them, we are with you. إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. We were just joking, kidding. We are not serious. The statement that they made that we believe too, according to the Quran, when you read it, you come to learn it was a statement by which they meant that we believe that he is God's messenger, but he is God's messenger for the Gentiles, for the children of Ismail, not for us. So that's the way they explained it. It is something similar that some Christians have started saying that as well. That Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was a messenger of God, a prophet of God, but for these people, not for us. So, I mean, if they say it now, It's understandable. We can talk to them about it. We can convince them. But if somebody would have said it in Medina while the messenger himself was present, it was as if, you were saying that we can't see the sun, even though the sun was shining brightly. So that's what they said. When they meet their leaders, they say, we are with you. We're just joking with them. We're just fooling them. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim wa yamudduhum fi tughyanihim yamahun. The fact is that God is mocking them, is joking with them. Wa yamudduhum, and He's extending them in their trial. Fi tughyanihim yamahun, given their transaction, yamahun, making them wander aimlessly. That is, these people, the way they are behaving, and God not punishing them immediately. He is extending their stay. God calls it, He is making fun of them. They are making fun of believers. God is mocking them. That is, they are living in this mistaken understanding, belief that they are okay. What they are doing is fine. The policy is working. Nothing is going to happen to them. Nothing wrong is going to happen to them. God is saying that I'm only extending their survival, their existence, which we call deal, or it's getting extended. And that is giving them this feeling that all is well. You're getting this false impression. And God calls it that Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. Allah is mocking them, making fun of them by doing it this way, that He is extending their stay, their existence for a while. This is because they are transgressing, yamahun, and they are wandering aimlessly. They have no idea of what they're doing, for their own welfare. They are the ones who have preferred misguidance over guidance. Ishtarabu dalalata bil huda actually means, in barter trade, you give one item for another. So the one you give and the one you take, you prefer it over the one you give. So that is what the Quran keeps saying about, this behavior, that they have purchased misguidance and sold guidance. That's the literal translation, which really means they have preferred misguidance over guidance. So, in other words, you've got only two choices in this life. Either you get guided or you get misguided. There's nothing in between. So these people, they got the opportunity of being guided, but they preferred misguidance over guidance. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ, but their trade did not profit them. That is, it was a trade. I mean, they could have purchased guidance and would have given away misguidance, but they purchased misguidance and they sold guidance. This is a trade. This trade has not profited them. مَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, and they are not going to find a way. They're not going to be guided. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم.